Commander Vexhai checked his instruments one final time as their sleek, reconnaissance vessel slipped through the darkness of space toward the third planet from the local star. The blue and green world hung before them like a jewel against the black void, its white clouds swirling in patterns that suggested a dynamic atmosphere and active weather systems. His two companions sat at their respective stations, each focused on their assigned tasks for what should be a routine scouting mission, intelligence. Officer Kailara adjusted her scanning equipment and began the preliminary sweep of electromagnetic emissions from the planet's surface. Her screens filled with data streams showing radio transmissions, energy signatures, and heat patterns from what appeared to be numerous population centers scattered across several large landmasses. The readings matched their expectations for a developing civilization that had recently achieved basic technological advancement. Pilot Nexver maintained their ship's stealth systems while monitoring local space for any signs of detection or pursuit. His instruments showed clear readings in all directions, with no indication that the primitive inhabitants of this world possessed the capability to notice their approach. The cloaking technology that made their vessel invisible to most scanning methods had proven effective against far more advanced civilizations than whatever existed on this small planet. The mission briefing had been straightforward and confident. Earth housed a species called humans who had evolved from simple primates into bipedal tool users over millions of years. Recent long-range observations suggested they had developed basic spaceflight capabilities within the last century, but remained confined to their home system with only primitive outposts on their nearest celestial neighbor. Their population numbered approximately 8 billion individuals, which represented a substantial workforce for the Zephyrian Empire's expansion plans. Commander Vexhai had overseen 43 successful planetary assessments during his career, each following the same predictable pattern. The scouting team would observe the target world for several days, cataloging military capabilities, technological development, and population distribution. Most civilizations at this stage of development maintained small defensive forces equipped with kinetic weapons and basic aircraft. The standard Zephyrian invasion fleet could typically overwhelm such defenses within hours of arrival. The Empire's expansion across 17 star systems had followed this efficient model repeatedly. Agricultural worlds like Kepler 442b had surrendered immediately upon seeing the massive Zephyrian battleships in their skies. Mining colonies around Proxima Centauri had attempted brief resistance before recognizing the futility of fighting. Against superior technology and overwhelming numbers, Earth appeared to fit the same pattern of young civilizations, ripe for annexation. Kailara began her detailed analysis of the planet's major population centers. Her instruments identified what appeared to be the primary administrative regions based on energy consumption patterns and communication traffic density. A large cluster of settlements along the eastern coast of the largest northern continent showed particularly high activity levels, suggesting an important governmental or commercial hub. The scanning data revealed transportation networks that crisscrossed the continents, connecting population centers through what appeared to be primitive ground-based vehicles and aircraft. Energy production facilities dotted the landscape, though most relied on crude fossil fuel combustion or primitive nuclear reactions rather than the clean fusion technology that powered Zephyrian civilization. Nexver adjusted their orbital position to provide better coverage of the planet's primary landmasses. The ship's advanced sensors could penetrate most atmospheric interference, giving them clear views of surface installations and infrastructure development. Everything appeared consistent with their intelligence estimates of a recently industrialized species still dependent on basic manufacturing and resource extraction. Commander Vexhai noted several peculiarities in the initial scan results that differed from their pre-mission intelligence. The planet showed more extensive urban development than expected, with massive metropolitan areas that housed millions of individuals in relatively small geographic regions. The transportation infrastructure appeared more sophisticated than typical for a civilization at this technological level, with complex networks spanning vast distances across multiple continents. Kailara discovered the first significant anomaly while conducting deep scans of a region in what their star charts designated as the North American continent. Her instruments detected unusual energy signatures emanating from a facility located in a desert region far from major population centers. The readings suggested extensive underground construction that extended much deeper than surface observations. Would indicate the underground complex appeared to be far larger than necessary for typical industrial or residential purposes. Her scanning equipment registered multiple levels of subterranean facilities connected by transportation tunnels and powered by energy sources that produce signatures unlike the fossil fuel plants visible on the surface. When she attempted to penetrate deeper into the structure with focused sensor beams, she encountered sophisticated interference that blocked her instruments. The jamming technology that prevented her scans should not exist on a planet where the inhabitants had only recently achieved basic spaceflight. The interference patterns showed characteristics of advanced electronic countermeasures that the Empire typically encountered only when facing civilizations with centuries of technological development. The fact that these primitives possessed such defensive capabilities suggested their intelligence estimates might be incomplete. Nextver noticed unusual readings on his navigation sensors that indicated possible tracking attempts from the planet's surface. The signals were subtle and intermittent, but they seemed to be actively probing his ship's position rather than representing passive electromagnetic emissions from natural or industrial sources. His stealth systems showed no signs of compromise. Yet something on the planet appeared to be attempting to locate their vessel. Commander Vexhai reviewed the accumulating data with growing concern. Their mission parameters had anticipated a straightforward reconnaissance of a developing world with minimal defensive capabilities. Instead, they were encountering technological anomalies that suggested a more advanced civilization than their long-range observations had indicated. The underground facilities and apparent tracking attempts represented capabilities that exceeded their expectations. The team decided to continue their observations while maintaining enhanced caution. They needed more information about these unexpected discoveries before they could provide an accurate assessment to Zephyrian High Command. The success of their previous missions had always depended on thorough intelligence gathering, and this world was already proving more complex than any they had encountered. As their ship maintained its silent orbit around the blue planet, each team member focused on their specific responsibilities while trying to understand the contradictions in their observations. The humans below continued their daily activities, apparently unaware that visitors from another star system were studying them from the darkness of space. Yet somehow their technology was detecting and responding to the alien presence above their world. The second day of observation brought revelations that challenged everything the Zephyrian scouts thought they knew about human civilization. Kilara had spent the night analyzing communication intercepts from the planet below, translating the dominant language patterns and beginning to understand the complex social structures that governed human society. What she discovered made her question their entire mission parameters. Commander Vexhai positioned their ship above what appeared to be the primary governmental center of the largest human nation. Their instruments showed massive crowds gathering in a central plaza surrounded by imposing stone buildings that radiated power and authority. The energy signatures from these structures indicated sophisticated communication networks and security systems that rivaled Zephyrian technology in complexity, if not advancement. The event below seemed to be some form of military ceremony, with thousands of uniformed individuals arranged in precise formations. Nextver adjusted their visual sensors to provide detailed imagery of the proceedings, while Kilara focused on intercepting and translating the audio transmissions from the gathering. What they observed initially appeared consistent with typical displays of primitive military organization. A female human in elaborate military dress stepped forward to address the assembled crowd. Kilara's translation systems identified her as General Patricia Hayes, apparently a high-ranking commander in the human military hierarchy. The general began speaking about military readiness and global security cooperation in terms that seemed routine for such ceremonial occasions. The shocking revelation came when General Hayes casually mentioned rotating active personnel and referenced numbers that made no sense according to Zephyrian intelligence estimates. She spoke of hundreds of millions of individuals under arms, reserve forces that numbered in the tens of millions, and coordination between military commands that spanned the entire planet. The figures she quoted exceeded the total population estimates the Zephyrian Empire had calculated for the entire human species. Kilara frantically checked her translation algorithms, convinced that some error in linguistic interpretation was causing massive numerical confusion. The mathematical conversions appeared correct, but the implications were staggering. If General Hayes was accurately describing human military capabilities, then Earth maintained standing armed forces larger than the combined military strength of the Zephyrian Empire across all 17 conquered worlds. Admiral Robert Chun took the platform next and began discussing naval operations that revealed even more disturbing information. He referenced submarine fleets operating in 7 different oceanic regions and mentioned underwater installations that the Zephyrian sensors had completely failed to detect. His casual description of maritime forces included vessel counts that exceeded the Zephyrian space fleet by orders of magnitude. The admiral spoke of coordination between surface ships, submarines, and orbital platforms as if such multi-dimensional military operations were routine rather than exceptional. He mentioned training exercises that involved hundreds of vessels operating across multiple ocean basins simultaneously, supported by logistics networks that could maintain such operations indefinitely without strain on the overall military infrastructure. Nextver became increasingly nervous as Admiral Chun's presentation continued. The humans' references to orbital platforms and space-based defensive systems suggested that Earth possessed military capabilities in space that their stealth ship had somehow missed during approach. His instruments began detecting subtle energy patterns that indicated active scanning from multiple sources, yet no direct confrontation or challenge occurred. Colonel Jake Morrison followed with a presentation on aerospace defense that completely shattered Zephyrian assumptions about human technological development. He described satellite networks that monitored every cubic meter of space around Earth, ground-based installations capable of engaging targets at interplanetary distances, and coordination systems that could track and respond to thousands of simultaneous threats. The colonel's discussion revealed that humans had been aware of extraterrestrial possibilities for decades and had built extensive defensive preparations specifically designed to counter invasion attempts by technologically superior civilizations. The defense networks he described could detect, track, and engage vessels using stealth technology far more advanced than what the Zephyrian Empire possessed. Commander Vexhai realized with growing horror that their ship had likely been detected and tracked from the moment they entered the solar system. The humans were apparently content to observe their observers, gathering intelligence about Zephyrian capabilities while demonstrating their own defensive readiness through these carefully orchestrated presentations. The most disturbing discovery came when Kylara intercepted communications between someone identified as General Frank Butler and military commanders around the globe. The conversations revealed that Earth was not governed by a single planetary authority as the Zephyrians had assumed, but consisted of dozens of independent nations, each maintaining separate military forces of enormous size and sophistication. General Butler coordinated with Chinese generals commanding armies numbering in the millions, Russian admirals controlling nuclear submarine fleets, Indian air marshals operating thousands of advanced aircraft, and Brazilian commanders responsible for vast territorial defense networks. The casual efficiency with which these separate national forces coordinated their activities suggested a level of intergovernmental military cooperation that the Zephyrian Empire had never achieved. The intercepted communications revealed that these various human military commands regularly conducted joint exercises involving forces from multiple nations. Operations that the humans described as routine training involved coordination between armies, navies, and air forces from dozens of different governments, creating combined military capabilities that exceeded anything in Zephyrian strategic Planning.Kylara attempted to calculate the total military potential represented by these global coordination efforts and found herself facing numbers that defied logical comprehension. Individual human nations maintained standing forces that equaled or exceeded the entire Zephyrian military, and when these separate national capabilities were combined, the total represented a military machine of unprecedented scale and complexity. The scouts discovered that humans did not simply maintain large military forces, but had built their entire civilization around the assumption that warfare was inevitable. Their industrial infrastructure included provisions for rapid conversion from civilian to military production, their educational systems incorporated mandatory military training, and their technological development prioritized defensive applications. Alongside commercial advancement, Nexver reported increasing evidence that their ship was being actively monitored by multiple tracking systems scattered across the planet's surface and orbital space. The humans appeared to be using their reconnaissance presence as a form of intelligence-gathering operation, allowing the alien observers to see carefully selected demonstrations of Earth's defensive capabilities while simultaneously studying Zephyrian technology and tactics. The second day concluded with the terrifying realization that Earth represented a military challenge unlike anything the Zephyrian Empire had encountered during its expansion across the galaxy. The humans possessed not only overwhelming numerical superiority, but also technological sophistication, global coordination, and strategic planning that suggested they had been preparing for interstellar conflict for generations. Intelligence Officer Kylara spent the entire third day diving deeper into human communication networks, accessing historical databases and military archives that painted an increasingly terrifying picture of Earth civilization. Her advanced translation systems worked continuously to process vast amounts of information about human conflicts, and what she discovered made her question whether the Zephyrian Empire had any understanding of warfare at all. The first shocking revelation came when she accessed records of something humans called World War II, a global conflict that had occurred only 80 years earlier. The casualty figures from this single war exceeded the total population of 3 entire Zephyrian worlds combined. More than 70 million humans had died in this conflict, yet the species had not only survived, but had grown stronger and more technologically advanced in the decades that followed. Commander Vexhai reviewed the data with growing disbelief. As Kylara presented her findings, the human conflict had involved armies numbering in the tens of millions deployed simultaneously across multiple continents. Individual battles had seen more soldiers engaged than the Zephyrian Empire possessed in its entire military structure. The scale of destruction and the resources devoted to warfare exceeded anything in Zephyrian historical records. What made the discovery even more disturbing was the realization that World War II represented just one conflict among many in human history. Kylara found records of dozens of major wars, each involving millions of combatants and lasting for years at a time. The humans appeared to have spent their entire recorded history fighting each other with increasing sophistication and deadliness. Nexver monitored their ship's systems while his companions analyzed the historical data, but he found himself increasingly concerned about the active tracking signals that continued to probe their position. The tracking had become more sophisticated and persistent throughout their observation period, suggesting that human technology was adapting to their stealth capabilities in real time. The pilot's concerns intensified when Kylara discovered records of more recent human conflicts in places called Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. These wars revealed that individual human nations could deploy hundreds of thousands of soldiers to distant battlefields as if such massive mobilization required minimal effort from their overall military infrastructure. The logistics capabilities needed to support such operations suggested industrial and organizational capacity far beyond Zephyrian estimates. Commander Vexhai attempted to calculate Earth's total military potential using the historical data and current intelligence, but the numbers defied logical comprehension. The intercepted communications suggested that the United States alone maintained active military forces numbering over 2 million individuals, With reserve components that could add another 1,000,000 trained soldiers within weeks of mobilization, the mathematical analysis became more horrifying when Kalara added similar calculations for other major human nations. China appeared to maintain standing forces of similar size. Russia possessed massive military capabilities despite occupying less territory than major Zephyrian colonies, and India commanded armies that numbered in the millions. When smaller nations were included in the total calculations, Earth's combined military potential reached numbers that exceeded the entire population of the Zephyrian Empire. The scouts discovered that humans had not simply stumbled into possessing large armies but had deliberately built their entire civilization around the capacity for massive warfare. Their industrial infrastructure included provisions for rapid conversion from civilian to military production during times of crisis. Factories that normally produced consumer goods could be retooled to manufacture weapons, vehicles, and military equipment within weeks of receiving mobilization orders. Kalara's analysis revealed that human educational systems included mandatory military training for young adults, ensuring that the entire population possessed basic combat skills and familiarity with military organization. Even civilian populations maintained personal armaments and received regular training in defensive tactics, creating a species where every individual represented a potential combatant. The breaking point in their understanding came when they intercepted records of a routine training exercise involving forces from an alliance called NATO. What the humans casually described as a small joint operation involved coordination between military forces from 28 different nations, naval fleets spanning 3 major ocean basins, air-powered deployments that included thousands of aircraft, and ground forces numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The exercise records revealed that this massive military operation was considered basic training rather than a significant deployment of force. The humans conducted such exercises regularly throughout the year, treating the coordination of multiple national militaries as routine practice rather than an exceptional demonstration of power. The casual efficiency with which they managed such complex operations suggested organizational capabilities that the Zephyrian Empire had never developed. Commander Vexai realized that the NATO exercise represented just one military alliance among several that operated on Earth. Other regional partnerships included similar coordination between major military powers, creating overlapping networks of mutual defense that could rapidly mobilize overwhelming force against any external threat. The political complexity of managing such alliances while maintaining their military effectiveness demonstrated strategic sophistication that exceeded Zephyrian understanding. Nexver reported that the tracking signals from Earth had evolved into what appeared to be active target acquisition systems. Multiple installations across the planet were now maintaining constant sensor locks on their ship, while orbital platforms that had previously appeared inactive were powering up defensive systems. The humans seemed to be preparing for some form of direct engagement while continuing to allow the Zephyrian ship to observe their activities. The most terrifying aspect of human military culture that Kalara discovered was their approach to technological development. Unlike Zephyrian civilization, which had developed advanced technology through peaceful scientific advancement, humans had refined their capabilities through constant warfare against each other. Every piece of military equipment, every tactical doctrine, and every strategic concept had been tested and improved through actual combat experience. The historical records showed that human military technology had advanced exponentially during periods of intense conflict. World War II had produced revolutionary developments in aircraft design, naval warfare, communications, and weapon systems within just 6 years of fighting. The humans had learned to innovate under pressure and had built their entire technological infrastructure around the assumption that warfare would drive advancement. Commander Vexai concluded his analysis with the sobering realization that Earth represented a military threat unlike anything the Zephyrian Empire had encountered during its expansion across 17 star systems. The humans possessed not only overwhelming numerical superiority and advanced technology, but also centuries of combat experience and a civilization built around the assumption that conflict was inevitable and victory required total commitment of resources and population. The fourth day brought discoveries that completely shattered any remaining confidence the Zephyrian scouts had about their empire's military superiority. Kilara had gained access to what appeared to be educational institutions where humans trained. Their military leaders and the tactical sophistication she observed there exceeded anything in Zephyrian strategic doctrine. These were not primitive warriors learning basic combat techniques but advanced strategists studying warfare as a precise science. Colonel Lisa Morgan stood before a classroom filled with uniformed students at something called the Army War College, delivering a lecture that revealed the terrifying depth of human military thinking. She discussed tactical approaches for desert warfare, jungle combat, Arctic operations, urban fighting, mountain warfare, naval engagements, air superiority campaigns, and even theoretical conflicts in space. The humans had developed specialized strategies for every possible environment where combat might occur. Commander Vexhai listened to the translation with growing horror as Colonel Morgan casually explained how human forces could adapt their tactics to face any enemy regardless of technological advantages or environmental challenges. The lecture included detailed analysis of asymmetric warfare, where smaller forces could defeat larger opponents through superior strategy and tactical flexibility. The implications were clear that humans had studied how to fight enemies more advanced than themselves. The colonel's presentation included case studies from actual human conflicts where outnumbered forces had achieved victory through tactical innovation and strategic planning. She described battles where human commanders had used terrain, weather, timing, and psychological warfare to overcome enemies with superior numbers or equipment. The tactical flexibility and adaptability she described far exceeded anything in Zephyrian military training. Kalara accessed additional educational materials and discovered that every major human nation operated similar institutions where military leaders studied warfare at levels of complexity that challenged her understanding. The Russians had academies focused on large-scale mechanized warfare. The Chinese studied coordination of massive armies across vast territories. The Indians specialized in mountain and desert combat. And the Americans had developed expertise in rapid deployment and global logistics. The most disturbing aspect of human military education was its emphasis on studying past conflicts to improve future performance. Unlike Zephyrian military training, which focused on maintaining existing capabilities, human doctrine emphasized constant learning and adaptation. Every war, every battle, and every tactical innovation became part of an ever-growing knowledge base that made their forces more effective over time. General Peter Walsh appeared in another intercepted communication discussing logistics capabilities that revealed the true scope of human military infrastructure. His analysis showed that human forces could deploy and sustain massive armies on the opposite side of their planet within days of receiving orders. They had built global transportation networks specifically designed to move millions of soldiers and their equipment quickly across vast distances. The general's briefing included detailed planning for scenarios where human forces would need to fight in multiple theaters simultaneously while maintaining supply lines across ocean basins and continental distances. The logistics systems he described could support millions of troops operating far from their home territories for extended periods without straining the overall military infrastructure. Such capabilities required industrial and organizational sophistication that the Zephyrian Empire had never developed. Nexfer reported increasing concern about their ship's status as human tracking systems became more aggressive and sophisticated. What had started as passive observation had evolved into active sensor locks from multiple sources, while orbital platforms continued powering up defensive systems around the planet. The humans appeared to be preparing for direct engagement. While maintaining the pretense of allowing continued observation, the pilot's instruments detected energy signatures consistent with weapon systems, targeting their vessel from dozens of locations across Earth's surface and orbital space. The humans had apparently been using their reconnaissance mission as an opportunity to test their defensive capabilities against actual extraterrestrial technology while studying Zephyrian stealth and sensor systems in detail. Kylara intercepted planning documents for something the humans called Operation Global Shield, a theoretical defense scenario designed to coordinate Earth's major military powers against an extraterrestrial invasion. The mobilization figures in these documents suggested that humans could field combined forces, numbering over 50 million trained soldiers within 90 days of such a threat materializing, supported by industrial production capable of equipping and sustaining such massive armies indefinitely. The operation plans included provisions for coordinating forces from over 100 different nations, each contributing specialized capabilities to a unified defensive strategy. The organizational complexity required to manage such coordination while maintaining operational effectiveness demonstrated strategic planning abilities that exceeded anything in Zephyrian military doctrine. Commander Vexhai reviewed intelligence about human nuclear capabilities and discovered that Earth possessed enough thermonuclear weapons to sterilize multiple planets the size of major Zephyrian worlds. More disturbing than the destructive potential was the casual way human military planners discussed the use of such weapons as merely one option among many in their strategic arsenal. Captain Susan Parker's briefing on nuclear doctrine revealed that humans had built these weapons not for conquest, but as tools of absolute defense. The strategic philosophy behind their nuclear arsenal assumed that any civilization attempting to invade Earth would face complete annihilation rather than successful occupation. The humans had created a defensive strategy based on mutual destruction that made conquest impossible regardless of the attacker's technological advantages. The nuclear doctrine included provisions for maintaining command and control even after suffering massive losses, ensuring that retaliation would continue even if primary governmental and military leadership were eliminated. The humans had built their ultimate defensive systems around the assumption that survival required the ability to destroy any enemy completely, regardless of the cost to themselves. Kilara's analysis of human industrial capacity revealed that their weapons production capabilities exceeded Zephyrian estimates by orders of magnitude. The humans maintained manufacturing infrastructure that could produce military equipment at rates that would allow them to replace losses faster than most enemies could inflict damage. Their industrial planning included provisions for continuing production even while under active attack. The scouts realized that human military doctrine represented a completely different approach to warfare than anything the Zephyrian Empire had encountered. Where other civilizations focused on developing superior technology or maintaining larger forces, humans had created a military philosophy based on tactical flexibility, industrial resilience, global coordination, and absolute commitment to victory, regardless of cost. They had built their entire civilization around the assumption that survival required the ability to fight and win against any possible enemy. The final revelation came on the fifth day when Commander Vexhai realized that their entire reconnaissance mission had been nothing more than an elaborate demonstration of human military capabilities. The terrifying truth became clear when they received a direct communication on Zephyrian frequencies that should have been impossible for any primitive civilization to access or decode. Ground control. Commander Bill Johnson's voice came through their ship's communication system with perfect clarity, speaking in flawless Zephyrian language with technical precision that indicated complete understanding of their technology. The human officer politely welcomed them to Earth and invited them to observe as long as necessary to make an informed decision about their Empire's future relationship with humanity. Kylara frantically checked their communication security protocols, but every system showed normal operation with no signs of penetration or compromise. The humans had somehow gained access to Zephyrian military communication networks without triggering any defensive measures, suggesting technological capabilities that exceeded their own despite appearing primitive from a distance. The message included data attachments that made the three scouts question everything they thought they knew about their technological superiority. The first file contained complete technical specifications for their stealth ship, including design flaws and operational limitations that even Zephyrian engineers had not fully understood. The humans had apparently analyzed their vessel's capabilities in detail while allowing them to believe they remained undetected. Commander Johnson's transmission continued with detailed maps of Zephyrian space that showed the locations of every major military installation, fleet position, and defensive network across all 17 conquered worlds. The accuracy of the intelligence was perfect, indicating that human surveillance operations had been monitoring the Empire's activities for an unknown period without detection. Nexvar's hands trembled as he reviewed the navigational data included in the human transmission. The maps showed hyperspace routes, supply lines, communication relays, and strategic resources that represented the Empire's most closely guarded military secrets. The humans possessed intelligence about Zephyrian capabilities that should have been impossible to obtain without decades of covert operations. The most chilling attachment was a series of casualty projections for various invasion scenarios that the humans had apparently been calculating since detecting the Zephyrian approach. The mathematical models showed detailed analysis of how a hypothetical conflict between Earth and the Empire would develop, including timeline estimates, resource requirements, and probable outcomes. The projections indicated that while humans would certainly suffer significant losses during the initial phases of any invasion, they possessed the industrial capacity and manpower reserves to sustain prolonged resistance while simultaneously launching counterattacks against Zephyrian homeworlds. The analysis suggested that human forces could potentially field more soldiers than the Empire had total citizens across all conquered territories. Admiral Nancy Williams followed Commander Johnson's transmission with an even more disturbing communication that revealed the extent of human military preparation. She casually mentioned that Earth's various military commands had been running invasion simulations since the moment their ship was detected entering the solar system, using real-time data about Zephyrian capabilities to refine their defensive strategies. The Admiral's briefing included results from thousands of computer simulations that consistently showed human forces not only repelling invasion attempts but successfully launching interstellar counterattacks that could reach Zephyrian space within months. The strategic planning revealed that humans had been preparing for extraterrestrial conflict for decades and possessed detailed contingency plans for scenarios that the Empire had never considered. Admiral Williams explained that Earth's defensive strategy assumed any alien invasion would represent an existential threat requiring total mobilization of human civilization. The response protocols included provisions for coordinating every military force on the planet, converting the entire industrial infrastructure to weapons production, and mobilizing the complete adult population for combat operations. The final demonstration of human capabilities came when they activated their orbital defense grid without warning. Satellites that the Zephyrian sensors had never detected suddenly powered up simultaneously across the entire planet, creating an energy web that could vaporize their ship instantly. The defensive network appeared out of nowhere, suggesting that human stealth technology was superior to their own ground-based installations, emerged from camouflage positions across every continent, revealing themselves as massive weapons platforms capable of engaging targets at interplanetary distances. The targeting systems locked onto their vessel with obvious hostile intent while maintaining perfect tracking despite their advanced stealth systems. The message was unmistakable that humans had been in complete control of this encounter from the beginning. Kalar intercepted routine communications between human military academies that provided the final shock to their understanding. Students who were still learning basic military principles were casually discussing tactical scenarios that would challenge veteran Zephyrian strategists with decades of experience. If human military education produced such sophisticated thinking at the student level, the capabilities of their professional forces were beyond calculation. The academic discussions revealed that humans taught warfare as both an art and a science, combining historical analysis with technological innovation and strategic creativity. Their military education emphasized adaptation, innovation, and the assumption that future conflicts would require capabilities that did not yet exist, but could be developed when needed. Commander Vexhai ordered immediate retreat when he realized that their continued presence served no intelligence purpose for the Empire but was providing humans with valuable opportunities to study Zephyrian technology and tactics. Every moment they remained in Earth's vicinity gave their potential enemies more information about Imperial capabilities while demonstrating human superiority in every measurable category. Their ship accelerated toward the edge of the solar system. The three scouts transmitted an emergency report to Zephyrian High Command with a unanimous and absolute recommendation to avoid Earth at all costs. Humanity represented a military threat unlike anything the Empire had encountered during its expansion across the galaxy, possessing capabilities that could result in the complete destruction of Zephyrian civilization rather than successful conquest. The transmission included all collected data about human military capabilities, industrial capacity, technological sophistication, and strategic planning, along with urgent warnings that any attempt at invasion would likely result in Imperial defeat. The scouts recommended that the Sol system be classified as Forbidden Territory and that all future expansion avoid any contact with human civilization within hours of receiving the report. Zephyrian High Command issued orders classifying the Sol system as permanently restricted space. All Imperial vessels were directed to avoid the region entirely, and all references to the human problem were sealed in classified archives accessible only to the highest levels of government and military leadership. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Frank Butler closed the file labeled Exercise Alien, contact and returned to coordinating joint training exercises with his international counterparts. For humans, the encounter with extraterrestrial scouts had been merely an interesting validation of their defensive preparations and an opportunity to test their capabilities against actual alien technology. The successful demonstration that Earth could defend itself against technologically superior enemies was noted in military planning documents and incorporated into future strategic development.